Hey, KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra here at KUsports.com with Benton Smith. Back in Lawrence, I'm Matt Tate in Indianapolis, and I will soon be leaving Indianapolis because Kansas is doing the same. The Jayhawks lose in the second round to sixth-seeded USC in overwhelming fashion, 85-51. I heard a lot of people break this game down. I talked to a lot of people about how this one might go. No one said it was going to be 85-51 USC. In fact, a lot of people tied to USC, I think, thought their team was going to lose. Very weird night, very weird ending, very rough way to go out for Kansas. And, almost fitting in a way because it was a very, very weird, rough season in a lot of ways. But definitely nobody saw this coming, and it was just self-said it after the game, Benton. It was a perfect storm of almost everything going wrong for Kansas and almost everything going right for USC. And when that happens, you lose by 34 points sometimes. Crazy stuff. What was your biggest takeaway from tonight?
I had a feeling coming into this game that it would be like in the 50s or first to 60 points wins. And
you were half right.
One of the teams ended up in the 50s, and the first to 60 did win, but not exactly what I had in mind. The biggest surprise to me was that KU's defense wasn't kind of up to the level that it had been playing at over the past month or so. They really did turn a corner late in the regular season and had a solid ending in Big 12 play. And defense was rarely an issue, but it was a glaring problem against USC. And I don't know, maybe this tournament is just a wake-up call that the Pac-12 just has athletes, and if you have athletes and you can run and you're long and you can contest shots, you're going to keep advancing, because that's kind of been the trend of this tournament so far. I figured KU would have a tough time scoring. I was blown away that USC did not, because I thought KU's defense was good enough to kind of slow them down and make it a low scoring, kind of grind it out, comes down to the last couple minutes type of game. It definitely was not that.
Yeah, no question about it. That's a perfect way to put it. If KU had somehow survived tonight, they were going to run into what you just described in the next round against Oregon. Yep. I don't know that anyone wants to play Oregon, including USC, but it is looking a little bit like that. You mentioned the Pac-12, but even Syracuse, right? They're long, they're athletic. Yeah. That's even though they don't always look the same, it's a very athletic team, and the length is a big part of it. So yeah, self-address that a little, basically by saying whatever we do, wherever we go from here, we have to recruit to become more athletic, and that's something he's talked about all year. In some ways, he talked about it last year even, and that team was 28-3, but there were still questions and concerns about KU's overall athleticism last year, top to bottom. So very weird to hear Kansas and the Kansas coach talk about that, because that's usually something in the past that KU has won on, right? They've out-athleted people so many times, and they're not able to do that. You go back to the Auburn exit in the second round in Salt Lake City in 2019. That was a blowout, ugly. You go back to last season where they may have won the whole damn thing, but they didn't get a chance to. That's ugly in a different way. And then now you go out this way and it's ugly. It's been a rough 3 years in that regard for Kansas. I think that
you could even go back to the Final Four. For a lot of fans, that Villanova game felt ugly because Villanova was just lighting it up, like all five guys just burying threes. And that game ended up being like 16 points or something for the final margin, but it was a blowout. That game was over by
10 minutes in, right?
Yeah.
And that's what tonight was. We talked about this a minute ago. Even though KU was in it, right? They started 4 of 20 from the field. I think 1 of 11. They were still in it. 29-21 after Marcus Garrett gets to the rim, makes a tough layup. Yeah. That's an 8-point game. You figure at that point, late first half, they can go into the half down 8 or down 10. that would be pretty incredible. And they'd actually have to feel like they were pretty good and in good shape and could actually still win. And then, boom, Garrett gets his second foul, comes out. USC goes on an 11-0 run in the half, and it's 40-21, just like that. I mean, look, there was a chance, right? KU could have come out and slapped them with an 8-0 run to maybe make it a game again. But I don't know how many people in that building or how many people watching, period, would have said they really thought KU could come back and win that game at halftime. I didn't. And that had everything to do with the matchup, and that had everything to do with the way the first half looked and felt. It felt like KU was overmatched. And sometimes that happens. That's why Self talks about matchups all the time, right? But it just definitely felt that way really early on. And the whole key, Kansas was going to have to make shots to be in this game and to win this game. Even if they were playing good defense, they were still going to have to make shots. They didn't do either tonight. And again, that's what happened. So a really strange and just sad ending for this team. I mean, you hate to say that word because we don't have any stake in the game at all. But you don't ever like to see anybody lose this way. Their season's over just like that. And I think it is particularly tough because Marcus Garrett's on the losing end of it. And that's the guy that I know that people who have covered this program and obviously the fans, they like the guy, and it's hard to see him go out like that. If this was in fact his last game as a Jayhawk, it very well may be. He went through senior night. He could come back. He may look into it, but I just have the feeling that it was the end, and that sucks. That I wouldn't root for that for any senior at any program to have to end this way. I mean, Luka Garza kind of went through the same thing earlier today, right? Mm-hmm. Oregon just blitzed Iowa, and he had 30-some points, and he still probably left the gym feeling a lot like Marcus Garrett did because it just didn't matter. And his final game of a great career was crap, was totally forgettable, something you'll never, ever want to talk about again. So I'm sure that's how Garrett's feeling and probably this whole team. I wanted to ask you how much you think the COVID thing plays into it. I mean, nobody's making excuses, and USC may have just rolled over KU even if they were at full strength. But this is a Kansas team that was really hot down the stretch. And not that long ago, they beat a really good Oklahoma team handily because they were still playing at such a high level with McCormick rolling and Wilson rolling and the team rolling. And I mean, you watch Oklahoma against Gonzaga today, Oklahoma would have beat 99% of the teams in the country today. They just happened to play Gonzaga, and nobody
happened to play the best
guys.
Yeah.
They're a really good team, and they showed it again today. Yeah. So Kansas is not that far removed from playing at that type of level, and yet what has happened between then and now is David McCormick was out for a while because of COVID, and Jalen Wilson was out for a while because of COVID. I'm not looking to make excuses. They weren't looking to make excuses, but there's no doubt that played a part in some of that disoriented look and just how they were off tonight. Don't you think that had to have some role in this?
I think so. I think it plays some part. Like you said, I mean, it might not have mattered just because it was a bad matchup for KU, regardless, just because of USC's length. And I mean, when Isaiah Mobley's out there just shooting 3-pointers like it's his job and just draining them, and and strumming on his fake guitar while he runs back on defense. I mean, that was just like you. I think you said perfect storm, right? I mean, Isaiah Mobley hitting threes. Everybody on USC was just hitting. I mean, once they got rolling, midway through the first half, it's kind of a low-scoring defensive game, and then USC turned a corner, and then it was just like lights out from that point on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's so many like what ifs with this, because like if they hadn't had that pause, would they have gone through the Big 12 tournament and won that and been on an even higher seed line and
Great point.
Played a totally different team in the NCAA tournament? So I mean, there's all sorts of factors you could spend hours going down rabbit holes and trying to connect dots and all that. But I mean, it's obviously not the same team that we saw, handle Baylor, and like you mentioned,
Right.
even beat Oklahoma without McCormick. So
Yeah.
it's I don't know that KU at full strength would have beat this USC team, but there's I guess it would definitely be a more competitive game, and I would like to think that it would have been more of that KU defense that we got used to seeing, and we just did not see that.
Yeah, and it happens, right? That's some of the best teams flame out like this, and this certainly was not one of the best Kansas teams, but I think they're going to be remembered as a team that maybe maximize what they were, right? I mean, like I think that they've earned the respect of the fan base, because when things were going south in January and they could have really imploded and maybe been like a 6 or a 7 seed in the tournament, they dug in and they fought and they came together and they listened to self and the staff and they grinded their way through it. And so I think there will always be a little bit of a soft spot in people's minds for this team, just because of their appreciation that they were able to fight. Look, this team finished second in the Big 12. I mean, the incredible thing about that is they finished ahead of a bunch of teams that whipped them, right? Like,
right.
That's the amazing thing. But again, they still deserve a ton of credit for that. And what does that mean? I don't know. It's not winning the Big 12, so we know what that means. We've seen that 100,000 times around Lawrence. Maybe it doesn't mean much. There's only one Big 12 team still playing, so maybe the Big 12 was overrated this year. It was a tough league. Maybe it was a tough league within itself, and yeah, maybe it just didn't match up with the rest of the country. I don't know. Big Ten, same. You could say the same thing about that league, right? So they're going through the same thing. So it doesn't really matter what you say. But I think this team will be remembered as such. One of Self's worst teams, but a team that people could appreciate and get behind, because they were thankful for how hard they worked, and then that they did maximize everything they could get out of themselves. The only thing you could have done more right is win tonight, maybe win the next game, and then losing the Elite Eight to Gonzaga. Kind of bookend your season with losses to Gonzaga. If they'd done that, this team would have been remembered very fondly. Instead, this is the last taste for people, so I think it immediately comes back to they weren't very good. But I don't know that that's fair. I think this team had a lot to be proud of. I think there was a lot that Self was proud of, and 21-9. There's a lot worse records out there, a lot worse, and especially in a COVID year where everything was different and weird and hard, and just the fact that we got to watch them play 30 games and learn a little bit about them along the way was pretty cool from our perspective, for sure. So is there anything else that they could possibly be remembered for? I mean, what jumps out at you? I probably covered it all in my 30,000 words right there, but I was searching. Anything I missed?
No, I mean, I think people will inevitably kind of connect Marcus Garrett and this team, because it ended up becoming a very good defensive team, which honestly I had my doubts about. But they definitely kind of bought in to kind of that classic kind of old school Self approach about how important defense is, and you just have to kind of be willing to grind and make the other team get a little bit uncomfortable, and make them tough things out offensively. And this team did become that eventually, and that wouldn't happen without Marcus Garrett. I can guarantee you that.
Right.
So I think probably people will kind of tie those two together. And man, you mentioned it earlier, but you got to feel bad for Marcus Garrett, because he was a year ago, like National Defensive Player of the Year, and on a team that looked like it was ready to run through March, and obviously nobody got to play last March. And what a strange career. Just feel bad for a lot of these guys, and not just on KU. There's guys on other teams who've had COVID impact their seasons and kind of derail things. So it's just a terrible time to be a college athlete with all these kind of out of control factors that you have to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we'll see what the future holds, obviously, but hopefully it won't be anything like this. I got to say, the Indy experiment was cool. I'm glad we were up here, at least I was, to cover it and experience it, because I think it's a cool thing. I don't think every city could pull it off. I think it would probably be hard to do again and may never be done again, but it was interesting. It was a cool thing, and good for college basketball for pulling it off, and we've got a lot of tournament left, and it'll still be fun to see how the final 16 teams make their way through this thing. I hope they get through it without any issues, and that's the last thing anybody wants to see. But I think that there's a lot to come with this team. I mean, there's again, Garrett will have a decision to make, but even if he leaves, they could potentially return the entire rest of the roster. And there's a lot to like there. I mean, they've got to figure some things out, and they've got to add some pieces that will help them out. But you'll have some guys coming back with a lot of experience. You'll have some guys coming back who are veterans. You'll have some guys coming back who kind of broke out this year a little bit, like Jalen Wilson and DeJuan Harris especially. And you should feel pretty good about this roster coming back, even though this is how it ended. And everybody's gonna be like, well, they're terrible. Like fans are gonna overreact, right? They're not. These guys are all gonna remember this feeling too, right? And so they will carry this with them, and it will motivate them, and it will drive them. And I think that's something that may benefit them in the long run. But they do. They have to get more athletic. They have to get better. They have to find a way to score easier, and then they have to hold on, whether he's here or not, to that mindset that Marcus Garrett brought, which is a Bill Self mindset, frankly, right? Like, make other teams play bad, make other guys look bad, make their life miserable, because that helps us look good and win. And that's Bill Self basketball. That's Marcus Garrett to a T. So I think we'll cover all of that. Obviously, there's a long road ahead between now and the start of next season, but it will be something that I think these guys carry with them. I got to say, too, when we were talking about Indy, it was cool. Hinkle Fieldhouse was really cool. I'm thrilled to have covered a game there.
The house that Brad Stevens built, some call it.
Go.
That might just be me.
He's very old. but yeah, I mean, like, there weren't very many fans in there because of COVID, and I can only imagine it when it was Butler Gonzaga in there on a big Monday type of game or something like that, a game day game, I should say. But just seeing it was really cool, and I think these KU guys probably enjoyed it too. I mean, they probably won't want to come back there anytime soon, because this will be their memory of it. But Self, for sure, right? He's as superstitious as they come. I don't think he'll schedule Butler anytime soon after this one. But it was, if you get a chance to go, you should go and check it out. And even if that's just touring it, go take a look. It was very neat to be there. I'm sad that it was a late game, because I didn't get to really enjoy the game or the experience, because I was worried about our deadlines.
Right.
And then on top of that, the game was a dud too. So it really didn't bring any incredible, memorable vibe with it. But still, just seeing it's pretty impressive, pretty cool. So now we move on, and we dive into this athletic director search, and we dive into this football coach search, and there's plenty going on at Kansas still for us to be busy. And we'll obviously keep covering basketball and football and every spring sport we can, and all those things too. So any final thoughts before we get out of here on this final 2020-2021 season episode of KU Sports Extra? What say you, Mr. Smith?
Well, I gotta say we should address the kind of that cloud looming over the program that itself has brought up numerous times. Like, we don't know if KU is going to be able to play in the NCAA tournament next year. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We have no idea at this point. But that's obviously going to be a huge storyline, regardless of how it plays out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I wrote a little bit about that. I mean, I didn't write anything new, but just the fact that now they head home licking their wounds and wondering about their future, and their immediate future could be in jeopardy if the punishment is severe, and they could be totally fine too. So yeah, that'll be interesting to follow. I think the last Self talked about it. He mentioned that, he was hoping late summer or maybe early fall there would be some sort of resolution. And look, these guys want this to be resolved. I mean, they want to be done with whatever it brings. They're ready for it to be over because it is hurting their recruiting. He has gone on record saying that.
Yep.
It makes everything harder. And right now, they're trying to build this roster up to be on this level and to be a team that can make a deep run again. And yeah, they had it like that last year, but it's after a night like tonight and that Auburn game too, it's hard to look at that and think, that's automatic. But he brought up a good point, tonight. I mean, that disappointed in the way they played, disappointed that it ended like this, but this is a team that he was still pretty proud of, and I think that says a lot. I really do, because Self, he doesn't say things that he doesn't mean. He doesn't say those types of things lightly. If he tells you he's proud of you, he's proud of you. And that's not what he was in January, right? He was not proud of this team in January. So a lot of guys grew up. A lot of guys have a lot more to grow and room to improve, but they will. That's what they do. Guys will be shooting tomorrow, worrying about next season and trying to get this taste out of their mouths. So I won't be. I'd like to shoot. It's been over a year since I've played a game of basketball myself, but I got to think that the next time I play, it'll look a little bit like tonight on the wrong side. So we'll see. But thanks to everybody for following along with our coverage all year. We'll continue to have coverage of everything, as it moves forward and break down this team and where it's going and where that needs to go and all of that. But, gosh, I didn't cover any road games but this. You didn't either. It was awesome to get back out on the road and cover these guys. It was different because it was still a lot of Zoom and a lot of this stuff, but we're getting there. And it was awesome to just have basketball and be able to cover NCAA tournament games and fill out a bracket. And I don't really want to talk about my bracket either, but it's not because of Kansas. I'm happy to report that. It is because of Illinois and Texas. Brilliant picks. Who picks against Gonzaga, man?
Oh, that was your major mistake.
Well, look, they're in my Final Four. It's not like I didn't go there. Yeah. But why does somebody make it so hard? I know you didn't.
No, but I did have Illinois and Purdue in the Final Four. Talk about a team that blew it. Purdue is basically playing like home games.
No kidding. No kidding. Oh, my gosh. Good stuff. Well, it's cool we're talking NCAA tournament. I'm looking forward to the rest of this tournament. I'll go on record right now. I got this green thing on. I hope Baylor wins it all. I like Baylor's team, and they deserve a crack at it. So I will be following that, but it's going to be awfully tough to beat Gonzaga, obviously. Ask anybody. So anyway, thanks again for paying attention and following along and interacting with us, and keep it coming. And any ideas and thoughts you have, we're happy to hear them always, because so much of what we do is made awesome by what you guys do and how you contribute to it. So thank you. It's been a wild, wild year. I will never forget a lot of it. Mostly the masks and covering games, like those first ones when they didn't even allow fans there, and it was just me and a bunch of cutouts hanging out. Like, weird freaking season, man. I mean, it's been really bizarre. So hopefully better days ahead for humanity and for the Kansas basketball program. That one remains to be seen. But that's all we got. KU finishes the season at 21-9, losing in the second round to USC, the 6th-seeded Trojans, moving on after an 85-51 win over number 3 seed Kansas. I don't know how many times you have to say it before it sounds right, but that is still just baffling to me. That is a lopsided score. For Benton Smith, I'm Matt Tate. Thanks for checking out KU Sports Extra tonight. We'll talk to you guys again real soon, somehow, probably about an athletic director or a spring football game or both. But we'll be there. Thanks for checking this one out. We'll talk to you later.